And we'll be recording this as well. So if you want a copy afterwards, I think we can hook you up with a copy of it if you wanted to kind of repurpose it or use it for anything at your program. We can get you in touch with that if that's something you'd like.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Hey, Coach, could you do me a favor real quick if you're looking at your computer? If you take your mouse and hover it over, because you can see me on your screen right now, is that correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
If you hover over the square that I'm in, you should see in the upper right-hand corner,
Right.
like a blue option with 3 dots. If you click on that, does it say make Brad Hilligoss the host?
It says gallery view, and then there's a picture of some of my basketball players. Oh, I see the 3 dots now. Mute my audio, rename, edit profile picture, edit non-video participants, hide self-view.
None of those are the options. Is the 3 dots, if you hover over my square, do you get that same 3-dot menu?
Where it reads more?
Yes.
Okay, I'm clicking on it. It says live on Facebook, live on Workplace by Facebook, live on YouTube, invite, pause recording, stop recording.
Well, that's not what we're looking for. All right, that's totally all right. Let's see the participants.
And then in the upper right-hand corner, I have a series of small boxes that form a square. And then it reads gallery view, and then there's an empty box that says enter full screen.
Hit that gallery view, if you don't mind. That's just going to put us side to side there.
Yeah, exactly. So you're to my left, and then there's a picture of Kurt Colbo, Anthony Barnum, and Jake Ullman to my right.
That might be like a profile picture or something that was set for your video screen at some point in time. If you wanted to start your video in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, you should see like a microphone and then a camera icon right next to it. And if you click on the camera icon, you can start doing a video of yourself if you want to.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. All right. At first, I thought you were a big Celtics fan, but then I realized those are Guinness Shamrocks behind you.
Yeah, I probably should take those down. I don't know how.
Oh, no, you're all right.
It
doesn't matter.
Basement bar.
Be authentic. I love it.
Okay.
Celtics fans probably drink a lot of Guinness anyway, so one and the same.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably do. I'm Irish, so we decorated our basement down here, and I'm trying to angle there. You're not going to catch any crap for having a couple shamrocks up on there.
Oh, no, not at all. What's the, if you don't mind me prying, what's the whiteboard behind you? Is that anything specific to basketball, or is that something else?
Yeah, the whiteboard is what my staff and I'm trying to just put some notes together. We're starting to work on what we're doing next year. Offensively, we're going to have a different type of team, and we're not going to be very big. So we typically spread things out the way it is anyway, but we're going to have to really spread things out next year.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, under quarantine here in Northwest Ohio, this is the first time in 25 years of marriage I've had a beard.
And how does she feel about it?
She kind of likes it.
Yeah? All right.
You know, I think she'd prefer it if it didn't have so much gray in it. But
I hear you. Mine naturally comes in red, but I'm starting to get a little gray down here myself. So
right,
keeping a little shorter than I normally do, just to mask that. But I see you've had some experience doing like lower level, like sixth grade teams, and then experience as AD. So that kind of holistic understanding of an entire program, I think, is going to be really valuable today, because we're going to have coaches from all over. I saw a couple questions from I think it was like a junior high coach come through. So it might be muscles you haven't flexed for a while, but if
well, I really enjoy talking with sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade coaches. My favorite year of all time was, or my favorite position was ninth grade basketball. I like that. That was fun.
what made it so much? I shouldn't say more fun, but what made that year so fun for you?
The ninth grade kids still had a lot of eighth grade in them, and the fact that they hadn't developed a self-efficacy where they thought they had all the answers, and their parents were still pretty good. And not referring to their parental skills, but they hadn't gotten crazy yet, and just the amount of teaching, and then with the ninth graders, you can see them develop because they're a little bit more physically developed and cognitively developed faster than you could with the younger kids, just because they were a little bit more coordinated. And plus I had I was at a school that really valued high school athletics, and that helped a lot. And our head coach at Oak Hill in Northern Indiana was a great guy to work for. It was a good experience for my wife and I.
Nice. And if I recall correctly, I listened to the Championship Vision podcast episode a while back that you did with Coach Furtado.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, is your wife a coach as well?
No, she's a school teacher.
Okay, school teacher. That's right.
Yeah, Stephanie and I have taught in this. We've moved 7 times, bouncing from job to job, and this is I think the 5th or 6th time that we've been teaching in the same building. So it's been a good career as far as that goes.
Very nice. All right, getting things set up here on my end.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna have you try one more thing here for me.
Mm-hmm.
If you move your mouse a little bit at the bottom of the window, do you see an option that says participants?
I do.
If you click on that, you should see a little box that just has you and me in it right now.
Yes.
If you hover your mouse over my name, do you see like an action menu at all? Or like those 3 dots or more options or anything like that?
It says more, right.
More. If you click on more,
Okay.
does it say promote to host?
No, it's excuse me, the box that reads live on Facebook and all those things.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm not seeing another option for. I see my name at the left side, and then it reads host, me, and then a gentleman named Bill or Brad. You're Brad. That's you, right?
That's me. Yep, I'm Brad. Yes, sir.
Okay, so move my cursor onto your name.
Mm-hmm.
There's the box that reads more. Okay, so now it reads chat, stop video, spotlight video, etc.
Nothing that says promote to host or change to host or make host?
Make co-host. Make host, yes.
Oh, if you click on make host.
Okay.
That might be what I'm looking for here.
And then it reads Brad is the meeting host.
Perfect. That's exactly what I needed.
Do I click change host or cancel?
Change host.
Okay.
Marvelous. All right, that's what I was looking for. I think when I set it up initially, I made you a host of the meeting, and then it meant I couldn't be the host. And just for my sake, because I'm going to be the one kind of doing some post work on this, I think afterwards we're going to just put this out as something that coaches can come back and access at a later date, and so that I can get you a copy. I just needed to be the host, so thank you for that. But we got a few more minutes here before we get going. Little background on me, just so you're aware. I played a couple years of varsity basketball, and then tried to, the coach at the time that I had he was kind of at the tail end of his career, and he wasn't super active with recruiting. So
Right.
I looked around at a few small college schools and then decided for my family to kind of stay close to home.
Sure.
So I just went to the University of Nebraska, got my sports journalism and media communication degree. And so I am the content producer at Hudl for elite sports. So like the NBA, NHL, Division I basketball, and then high school basketball as well.
Right.
I love like stats and analytics. And I know that's kind of a different sphere of the basketball world, but more than anything, I just like talking hoops with people. So this is the favorite part of my job. I've talked a lot with young, inexperienced coaches and coaches like yourself that have been around and taken some pride in building programs. So just trying to help our community as a whole just get better and share ideas. Sure. That's what I like to do.
I think it's great.
And last year was your first year at Delta High School, right?
My second year.
Oh, second year. Okay. All right.
So I've been at Delta for 2 seasons.
Right. And how are things going with your program so far?
Well, right now everything's on a standstill because of the virus, but it's a different. I haven't been at a school that small since the middle '90s. So at Delta, we're pretty small. So most of my kids, or most of my boys, I should say, are playing baseball or running track. So I wouldn't have a whole lot of kids to work with right now. But that doesn't bother me so much. I enjoy watching them play other sports.
Nice. And did you guys get a chance to finish your season? Through the pro season stuff? Okay.
Yeah, we got beat in the sectional championship game this year.
All right. Very nice. Was it a case of them just being a better team, or was it kind of like?
Oh my God! Yeah, it was. Yeah, they were. I mean, it was Cardinal Stritch out of Toledo. Don't get me wrong, Jamie does a great job. But he's got more than one player who's already signed Division I with Greg Campy at Oakland, and he's got a couple others that are going to be playing college basketball as well. At Delta right now, we do not have that type of player. So yeah, it was. I mean, we beat a team that beat us once in the regular season in the sectional semis. We won 35-30, and then we knew going into the Stritch game, they're a Catholic school. It was going to be a challenge, but you still get to play for a sectional championship. And Northwest Ohio basketball is not just good; it's outstanding. And I think I'm a pretty good judge of that since I played and coached as a head coach in the state of Indiana. But we're so close to the Indiana border, I think that some of the basketball mindset kind of creeps over this way. But high school athletics in general in Northwest Ohio are fantastic. I mean, geez, we got a television station named BCSN that basically just covers. I mean, they do some college games, but they do 3 or 4 high school games a night.
Jeez.
So high school athletics in this area is very important to the people that live in Northwest Ohio.
Man. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started here in just a moment.
Okay. I'm going to walk over here and pick something up.
All right.
are you guys doing health-wise?
We're feeling good. I mean, we've had minimal cases so far. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, but we're abiding by the social distancing, quarantine principles and stuff. So those in my area and in my family and stuff, we're doing all right. But just lucky so far. That's
one of my old coaches, one of my old varsity assistants, the best varsity assistant I ever had, left us when I was the head coach at Maumee and got a college job as an assistant at a school in Nebraska. Loved it out there. It's a NAI school. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Be something like Doane or Wesleyan or
exactly
Doane.
Yep.
Yeah. Doane's had a lot of success over the years. They got a interesting program, but let's see. I'm trying to think. Probably their top rival in state is going to be Wesleyan, and Wesleyan has had some very, very good players come through as of late, which kind of gave them a little bit of supremacy. But Doane is consistently putting together a pretty solid product. So best of luck to him.
Yeah, he started off doing some very low-level, had low-level responsibilities. And by the end of the season, he was sitting right next to the coach. So he did a great job of working his way up the ladder.
That's awesome.
He's the #1 assistant now at Wittenberg here in Ohio, which is one of our better Division III programs, if not the best. I'm going to use this as a segue to kind of start the official. I mean, you and I have been talking now for about 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to kick this off on a more official note and introduce you. Coach Derek Sheridan, currently at Delta High School. You have some exciting coaches that have worked with you as you were a player. You played a year of varsity basketball before doing some JUCO, and then moved on to Huntington, if I'm correct on that, and played for a coach who now has the gym named after him. That's usually a pretty good sign of coaching pedigree. What did you learn about coaching from those caliber of coaches that you had? Growing up in Indiana, for most of us, it was assured you were going to have more than one coach. Coaches in Indiana get fired at a tremendous rate. I got to play I played 4 years of varsity basketball in high school. 3.5 probably to be more technical. My first coach, Paul Kaiser, was just, as far as organizational skills and discipline and how he taught and how he held our attention, was second to none. And, Rick Stout, Coach Kiesling, those guys were in high school. More than anything else, I learned about the importance of developing your skills. And that was right. That was in the 80s. That was right when Gene Cady had started to make weightlifting and strength and conditioning in vogue for basketball players. So we took that real serious at Eastern Greentown High School. And then, going to college, especially at Huntington for Coach Platt, that was he was a guy that could get more out of you than what you thought you could give on a daily basis. And if you didn't give it, you just didn't play. Very demanding, very good tactically, but more than anything, he could get us to do things that we were never in our comfort zones when we played for Coach Platt. Just a tremendous human being, #1, but #2, I guess if I had to say one thing I took from him, it was your yes means yes and your no means no. There was no gray area. There was no arbitration. He was not a player's coach. He laid down very clear expectations, and everybody had a very clearly defined role. And if you weren't getting the job done, you just didn't get to play. And I guess the flip side of that coin is he was exceptional at teaching you what he wanted you to do within your role and what his expectations for each of us were. And his practices were only practices that I ever participated in as a player where they were over before they began. They were physical. They were fast-paced. There wasn't a lot of standing. He was very good at teaching on the fly, but the time just went by incredibly fast. Whereas I played for some other coaches where it wasn't the case. I'm not saying anything bad about him. It was just a difference in philosophical approaches. But Coach Platt's practices by far were the most physical, challenging, mentally and physically and fundamentally that I'd ever taken part in. So, there's I could probably talk about playing for him for an hour at a minimum. The guy was just he recruited a certain kind of kid that he thought would fit in, and I would probably say liken him to a guy like Bo Ryan or maybe Dick Bennett as far as we very rarely ever had somebody on our squad who was touted to be, or came out of high school highly touted. Now, we did have a couple, but most of us were guys that, he just kind of molded us into he had a vision for what he thought the team would be, and he could mold us all into a part of what he thought would make us successful. So I took a lot from him.
No. Thinking in terms of younger coaches who have made that jump from the playing side to the coaching side, what's one thing you'd wish you'd known or a piece of advice you'd like to give yourself back when you were starting out your coaching career?
Don't take a bad job just to be a head coach. If you've got an opportunity to be an assistant coach for somebody who is well respected and someone who runs a program in a very efficient manner and who's successful, you're much better off taking an assistant job in a program such as that than taking a bad job when you're young. When you're young and you take a bad job, a job that hasn't historically been winners or been competitive, and there's been a lot of turmoil, a lot of transients. And when you're young, you don't have all the answers. I mean, not that I do. I would never even come close to saying I have any answers for that matter. But when you're young, you're still trying to figure out what it is you want to do, what it is you want to accomplish. You don't have a solidified philosophical approach to really anything other than you just want to be a head coach. But when you get a bad job at a young age and you get your tail beat in consistently, that makes it very, very difficult for you to move up the ladder. Upward mobility, I think, is the modern term for it. A lot of those guys end up going back to being assistants, which there's nothing wrong with that. At least they're staying in the game. But when you go to an interview for a head coaching position and you've come out of a program where you have not had much success, if any success, or any notable success, that opens the door to a lot of questions that you have to answer. And then behind closed doors, the interview committee puts their heads together and they say, we really like this kid, but how in good faith can we hire him after just firing our last coach, knowing that we have to put in all those, in modern times, social media, the newspaper, the TV stations, whatever, what his record was at said school. And it takes a real special Board of Education and high school administration to give somebody a nod after coming off a tenure at a certain school where they have not had any success. So my advice to people who are younger, even my assistant coaches who are wanting to be head coaches someday or who have moved on from our program or now head coaches, you have to be very selective about the job that you take. Because if you take a bad one and you don't turn it around, especially if they get antsy and the administration, Board of Education doesn't give you ample time to build the program and they fire you, it's a tight wire act now that, that makes it very difficult to get your next head coaching job. So patience, I guess, would be the best way to put it. Now, there are instances where one of my best friends is one of them. He took a bad job and got his brains beat out, and someone saw something in him, and his next job, he's still there. He's the head coach at a powerhouse in northern Indiana, and he's had a great career there, loves it. But that's you take a bad job when you're young. That's an awfully hard thing to rebound from.
That makes sense. In terms of working with your staff right now, I pointed out to you ahead of time that whiteboard behind you that you and your staff are kind of working on your plans for the upcoming season. How are you guys communicating or building your game plan right now? How are you kind of adjusting to the situation that we're in to still try to build the game plan ahead of time?
Right now, we're doing everything through email, electronic communication. We haven't been together since our awards night, just because of the lockdown we're on now. But we texting, emailing, using our smartphones to take pictures of things, and basically that's about it.
Has it been challenging, or have you been able to kind of meet the expectation that you have for this time in terms of building your program?
Yeah, I don't want to say we've met any expectations, but the things that made the job at Delta so unattractive for a lot of people over the last X amount of years. I think I'm the sixth coach in 5 years, or fifth coach in 4 years. They've had a lot of turnover in the last half decade or so. We've done a great job of changing that stuff to where we're not dealing with a lot of the things, knock on wood, which, is in coaching things tomorrow, but we're not dealing with the things that drove the other guys out. We've got the kids playing about as hard as they can play. We are very, very far behind in fundamental skills after 2 years. And we're, once I'm able to get back with the team, that's over the last 2 summers, our big emphasis is just becoming better fundamentally, individually, and our teamwork, all those things. I'm very happy with where we're at now. We've gotten rid of the selfishness and the apathy more than anything. So that's, I'm happy where we're at in a lot of the intangible things. I'm really happy where we're at with the kids' effort level. So once we get, and it's going to be a daunting task, once we get us to where we are fundamentally sound, I think we'll be okay. But that's where we're at right now. We're just not very sound fundamentally. Put us together on a basketball court. My staff has done a great job of doing things tactically to keep us away from our weaknesses and taking advantage of our strengths, but we're striving to get to the point where we can not play the game of basketball with so many Band-Aids.
Does the amount of time you spend on fundamentals change as your team becomes more fundamentally sound? Do you decrease the amount of time you spend on a given practice working on fundamentals?
Yes. The first part of the year, once we get our football players, or even before we get the football kids in, a mass majority of our practice time is based on individual and team fundamentals. Individuals dribbling with your offhand, jump stops, shot faking, all those things. Defensively, footwork, and then team passing, moving on the pass defensively versus moving on the catch, closeouts, blockouts, all those things, and which we still work on later in the year. But we condense once we get back from Christmas break, we do our best to condense the first 25 minutes of every practice to be player development, fundamental skills, and then we hit the ground running after that with mainly team things and competition. Now, the flip side of that coin is our practice sessions at that time of the year, even going into the tournament, aren't as short as a lot of other programs. But we're in a position right now at Delta where we really can't take too much. I mean, we don't go 2.5 hours in February or late January, but we're still going an hour, 45 minutes, hour, 50 minutes, just so we're not cheating our kids of the fundamental skill aspects of practice. We feel like if we cut it down to an hour or an hour and 20 minutes, whatnot, most people, I think in head coaching would agree, the first thing that goes is your fundamental work. And we're just simply not in a position right now where we can afford to do that.
I remember Michael Jordan talking about why they were so successful with the Bulls is because Coach Tex Winter insisted they worked on the fundamentals more than anybody in basketball.
Right.
So, and even the best teams got to spend and devote a serious part of their practice to fundamentals. And you said you don't reduce that amount of time as the season goes on. You try to maintain that in the later stages of the season as well.
Yeah, we even going into the sectional tournament, we're still practicing an hour and 40 minutes, sometimes an hour and 50 minutes. So we don't cheat the kids of the fundamental development, player development. And plus, we're not a ball screen offensive team, so we're still putting entries and sets in all the way up to the end of the year. And we have a lot of breakdown drills we do defensively. Now we shorten the time on our breakdown drills dramatically. Do it, get it right, we move on. But we've noticed, or I should say, because I've only had my crew at Delta for 2 years, I've noticed over the last X amount of years, when you take those breakdown drills and you stop doing them in practice and just focus on 5-on-5, at least with us, our defense suffers greatly. So instead of having 5 minutes for whatever drill you're going to do, whatever's important to your defense, we just simply tell the kids, do it, get it right, and we move on. And that's an incentive for the kids too. We pretty much use that philosophy, that verbiage, post-Christmas break all the way through with things that we've already taught them. Do it right, show us you do it right, and we move on. After that period of time, our practice plan changes from having, a certain time allotment per topic to a number at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we don't feel we're pigeonholed to stick with something for a certain time. Do it right, we move on.
Great philosophy. I like that. You've mentioned your assistant coaches a few times throughout your past couple of answers. Talk about the role. Do you have clear defined roles for your team when they come in, or do they kind of naturally find that role within your system? And is it difficult to kind of find that role, or easy for you to kind of hand stuff off? How has it been building this new staff?
It's been relatively easy for me in my career. We spend a lot of time together in the summer, whether we're playing golf or our wives, whatever, hanging out socially. But I don't hire guys. I learned the hardest way. Don't hire an assistant coach just because of his pedigree. He might be a fantastic coach, and he might be a fantastic teacher. But if he's not loyal and going to be loyal to you as the head coach, you're going to have nothing but heartache. He's going to cause problems even after a win. I found that out the hardest way possible. Ever since then, I've hired guys who were loyal. Number one, that's our number one requisite. We're going to be loyal to each other. Doesn't mean we always agree, but we disagree professionally and behind closed doors. But we've got each other's backs, and they're eager to fulfill the roles that I give them. And I think when you expect excellence and you really demand it, but the thing is, you've got to teach these young guys how you want things done. And that's the neat thing about hiring guys who might not have as much experience as some of the other people who've applied for an assistant job. But when you hire a young guy who's really hungry to be good and wants to be a head coach, I like hiring assistants who want to be a head coach someday. Yeah, sure, it takes a lot of time out of your personal life to show them exactly how you want things done. But then there's really no excuse for it not to be done the way that you've prescribed it to be done. So I've really enjoyed that over the years and that's where I'm at now. I've got a very young staff. One of them actually played for me at Maumee years ago. But I enjoy taking the time to give these guys responsibilities and show them how I want done, because that's what was done to me when I was their age. I can't thank Coach Cirk and Gaber, those guys, enough for giving us responsibilities. The flip side of the coin is you're given a responsibility, you're going to be held accountable for making sure it's completed properly. And I've always felt, well, I shouldn't say always, after my experience with a disloyal assistant, changing how I hired guys based on their eagerness and their work ethic, loyalty, all those things, I've really felt a lot of pride and accomplishment, or I should say a pride in their accomplishments when they move on and they take their first head coaching jobs. Or for, like Nate Wiley, he left us, he went to the college ranks. And, my wife and I can't wait to get his text messages or his emails or videos that show us what his team's doing. And, we've got a lot of pride in how Nate's progressed as a coach.
That's awesome. Staying connected with coaches that you've worked closely with. I got a couple questions here from a coach that I want to pose to you. What do your first 2 weeks of practice look like each year? Is it consistent from year to year, or do you try to adapt that a little bit?
It was consistent year to year when I was at Maumee. I was the head coach at Maumee for a long time. And once we got our system in and we got a practice structure, then it was fairly consistent. The problem, I shouldn't say the problem, when I was at Maumee, John Bowles was our head football coach, and he was arguably the best high school football coach in the country. So we knew our kids were going to make the playoffs. Here in Ohio, not every football team makes the playoffs, as they do in Indiana. So we knew there was going to be a lot of seasons where John's kids were going to make a run into the postseason tournament. So that put a big that made us adjust a lot of how we did our first two, or how we planned our first 2 weeks of practice. But at some of the other schools I've been at where a football team wasn't that strong, then the only time we really deviated the things we did was based upon how many returners we had coming back who were fundamentally sound and were already good leaders, whatnot. If we had a core group of older guys coming back, or I should say a core group of people who had started or had a lot of varsity experience, then that altered things a little bit too. But on a basic year to year, it's relatively the same. We really stress fundamentals. The biggest thing we feel like your first 3 days of practice, you've got to get them to the point where they're going 100 miles an hour, all out effort, and anything less than their best is unacceptable. So to make 400 words into 40, I think we've always based getting them in that mindset where any excuses, any apathy, anything that's not done as hard as they can do, we know they're not going to be a great execution. We know they're not going to be great fundamentally at that period of time. But if they're going to screw something up, they better screw it up as hard as they can. And getting that mindset early for us has been very important, because I don't know if you can get that mindset in them in January if they haven't already had it.
In terms of coaxing that effort out, is it part of like your energy that you bring to practice, or is it the system of drills or the way you structure your practice that you try to get 100% out of them?
I think the way we structure our practice is a large part of it, but just going back to brass tacks, anything less than their best isn't acceptable. We do a lot of recording of times, and we do a lot of recording of where they were at on Monday, and now you've got a different number to beat on probably half of our drills, whether it's individual or team. Or if you don't beat that number, then that's a problem. We tell our kids a lot, the term best is an abstract term. What your best was yesterday doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be your best today. So getting kids to buy into getting out of their comfort zones and getting after it to a level where we feel like our kids are going to do things. We don't like to use the term play hard, because that's kind of a coaching lingo. So we feel like if we can break things down for them, give them specific things, specific objectives, specific goals that they're accountable to meet, then you're going to get their best efforts when they attempt to meet those goals. The other thing to factor in, which I tell any young coach, you always remember, in basketball, you get to pick who's on your roster, which I would expound upon that, but I think everybody understands what I'm saying.
Definitely. Yeah. Thinking in terms of the next 3 to 6 months, I know you've liked to do like summer camps and clinics. Is that right? We're kind of in an uncertainty of, we don't know when this lockdown or the social distancing aspect is going to kind of fade away. So are you starting to think about other things you can do this summer, or are you thinking about pushing things back? How are you kind of adapting the next 3 to 6 months and setting the table for your next year?
We're just now in the process of looking at that. To be 100% honest, not that I ever lied to you, but we're teaching online classes right now, and I'm a physical education teacher, and technology is not my strong suit. So right now I'm spending a majority of my energy on trying to figure out how to use Zoom and download videos onto my Google Classroom, using Google Drive, those things, just so I'm not slighting my kids in physical education class. I'm going to drive my wife nuts, because that is her cup of tea. So I've got to the point now where I can function on about 50% of this stuff without having a meltdown and bothering her to come downstairs in my office to help me. But we're starting to look at what we're going to do as regards to when our summer camp's going to be, where we're going to travel, who we're going to host. I haven't even started with our spring and summer clinics yet for our Northwest Ohio District 7 Coaches Association, because I don't know when we're going to be able to get out of our houses. So to answer your question, it's a process we're just now starting. If I was a young, spry lad who had a really good foundation in technology and this stuff wasn't killing me, learning how to do the phys ed online, then I think I'd probably be a little bit further ahead of where I'm at. I mean, I know I would be. Plus, I don't have access to my kids now, so that's another drawback. But we're going to have to get it figured out. That's for sure.
Another thing that usually starts to transpire around this time is AAU basketball in the spring and summer. Is that important to you to get your kids into AAU, or what's your relationship like from the high school side working or looking at AAU over the coming months?
It depends on the kid. I've had an awful lot of good basketball players who were three-sport athletes, and AAU wouldn't have helped them a bit. I've had some players who were not three-sport athletes who went into AAU and had bad experiences. I've had some that had good experiences. I guess if I'm taking one of the kids on our team who's a role player, and I stick him on an AAU team and he chooses to do that versus playing baseball for a high school, then I would have a real problem with that. I'm not helping that kid, and he needs to be playing baseball, especially if he's above average or if he likes baseball. So I've never been at a school with a big enough enrollment where a majority of our students or student athletes on the basketball team weren't multi-sport athletes. So I'm probably not the best guy to ask about AAU. I've had a lot of kids. Sean Flanagan's best player I've ever coached. Tyler Martin would be a close second. Did AAU help those guys? Sure it did. But they love basketball so much that they weren't interested in playing other sports, especially in the spring. So sure, AAU helped them. Did it help some other? Sure, it helped them. But I don't know if I took the AAU experience for a lot of our players over the years and put that up against them playing baseball, where now you're with a high school coach who is demanding that you compete on a daily basis, and you've got to meet his expectations every day in practice and be held accountable for your performance on the baseball diamond, which I think is invaluable, versus a kid that's going to AAU once or twice a week and then he plays in a couple tournaments on the weekends. Does he become a better basketball player? Maybe a little. But that kid that's being held accountable for his performance by a high school coach, that's a kid we're not going to have to brainwash when we get him back. He's still going to be pretty sharp. Not necessarily fundamentally basketball-wise, but we're not going to have to worry about his attitude, his work ethic. And those things, to us, are essential. So, again, I guess going back to answer your question, it depends on the kid.
Sure. Going back a little bit to kind of looking, zoom out a little bit at the whole program and kind of growing and developing players. As the varsity coach, what do you want or hope to see from maybe that junior high or freshman level player, or from the coaches who are coaching them within your system?
I like us to – we all use the same terminology. They're going to run a watered-down system of our offense. I don't get they're going to run pack line defense. We're a 95% to 99% 2-3 zone at the varsity and junior varsity level. But I want the kids to get a good foundation of how to play fundamental man-to-man defense at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade levels, and even some years at the 9th grade level. But they're going to run a watered-down version of our offense that's easier to learn. That way, when they come in, there's no question about terminology, and they know the basic setup of what's going on. And that saves you a tremendous amount of teaching time at the beginning of the season. They're going to run our 2 or 3, 4, 5 of our main entries or sets. And the biggest thing, even which we feel overrides all the tactical stuff, is get them in a mindset where everything you do, you've got to do to the best of your abilities. I mean, you got to get after it. You've got to execute. Passing the ball for us is something that we really critique. Are you zipping the basketball when you pass? Catching the ball and not traveling at that age, jump stops, all those things. If you have to teach those things to a kid who's on the JV or even varsity, like where I'm at now at Delta, where we still work on that daily, that takes away a lot of your team practice time. You know, if I took a practice plan from year number 6 when I was at Maumee and let's say practice number 27, and looked at our practice plan now at Delta practice number 27, they're going to be 180 degrees away from each other. So getting them fundamental, getting them to play hard, to get them to execute, getting them the terminology, those are our expectations for our lower level coaches, even down to our elementary level.
That makes sense. As far as getting community buy-in, right? Because it's a big part of getting your program up and running. What type of things do you do to get parents either involved or bought in, or maybe even some of those athletes bought in? What are some of the things that you do that you think are unique or special at your program to kind of build those processes?
I think one of the most crucial things that a head coach can do is your first meeting upon taking the job. Your first meeting with the parents, members of the community, players, and players, you know, K through 12. We invite everybody to that meeting. Is when you walk out of that meeting, everybody in attendance has a very crystal clear understanding of what your expectations are for the players, the coaches, and how that program is going to be ran. And it's got to be a meeting where the head coach doesn't leave any stone unturned, but everyone, a blind person should leave that meeting having a very clear understanding of what this guy stands for. Now it's your job to stand for those things and uphold everything you've said, but that's basically it for us. I'm not somebody who does a lot of things on social media. I don't do much at all, actually. If any, I don't even have a Facebook account. But we get the community involved by after games, more so when I was at Maumee. I still live here and drive out to Delta. So in Maumee, after every game, the parents and the players, we'd all go to the same restaurant after darn near every game. You know, our number one rule was no one talks about the game. And we had a great experience doing that. Running your summer camp, having your basketball players work stations and be camp counselors for the kindergartners, first graders, second graders, all the way up to sixth grade, and watching those kids work with the younger ones. That's been something I've been very proud of over the years that we've really done a good job of. But going back to my original statement, I think it all starts with your first meeting with the community. You know, my first open gym at Delta was basically our first meeting. And we had a lot of kids there, a lot of high school kids. In our next open gym, less than half, you know, came back. Well, that was fine with us. The kids that came back got it and wanted to be a part of something like that we were offering, and the other ones didn't. That's fine. So I think that the most important thing, the most important way to answer your question is that first meeting, in my opinion, has got to be very specific as to what the coach is going to expect from his players and parents. What are you going to tolerate? Are you going to tolerate a parent trying to talk to you about a kid's playing time after a game or after a practice? Because in this business, the longer you're in it, you find out you get what you tolerate. So I think it's your job as the head coach to make sure everyone leaves that first meeting understanding exactly what you do and don't tolerate.
Very important. Absolutely. Just got a few last questions coming through. You talked a little bit earlier about, you know, knowing your athletes. Are they multi-sport athletes, or do they have the time or desire to kind of invest more in basketball, maybe throughout the entire calendar year rather than just the season. In terms of focusing on those multi-sport athletes, how do you take a football player who just got done and bring them into your system? And it's a different coaching style probably than the head football coach. Or how do you, do you work with other coaches from other sports to kind of help that transition? Or is that something that you just know that we got to do and condition every year, bring those athletes in and then get them ready for baseball or track or whatever they may be doing in the spring?
The euphoria for a basketball coach or for any coach that matter, I use basketball because we're the middle sport. Euphoria for us is if the head baseball coach, the head football coach, the head basketball coach are on the same page. If their philosophy of sharing athletes is amicable or the same as the basketball coaches, that right there alleviates a lot of problems. The second thing I think is if you've got a baseball coach and a football coach who are willing to get together with the basketball coach in late March, early April, and you sit down with 3 or 4 different calendars and you say, okay, here's what I want to do. And you work with each other's schedule and you have the underlying or overriding philosophy that we're not going to make our kids make choices. I think that's probably the most underrated aspect of high school coaching at the varsity level, with whether you're baseball, football, or basketball. But having a coaching staff where you're not going to make kids make choices and you work with each other's schedules so the kids can play basketball in the morning and then go to baseball in the evening. Or you combine your football and basketball weightlifting times so that the kids who play football can still come to open gym and get some reps in and get some shots up. I think that's imperative. And when you look at most of your really, really strong, and I mean perennially strong athletic departments at the high school level, they have that philosophy. And we have when John Bowles and Todd Erie and I was the head basketball coach at Maumee, we had that, and it was interesting to see how everything got better real fast. Because when I took over the Maumee job, it was just as bad as any place I'd ever tried to rebuild. And getting together with John and Todd and Cam, the baseball coaches, and coming up with that idea, we're just not going to make kids make choices, was a deal breaker for us. Everybody got better. Football got better, basketball got better, and baseball got better. And the kids' parents didn't feel like they were being pressured to make choices as to where they were going to go in the off season. So I'm a huge advocate of that. As far as taking a football kid who loves to compete and isn't and never will be a great basketball player, is the whole reason why we went back to blocker mover offense versus Princeton. We were teaching Princeton offense for years in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then I took the Maumee job, and I've got these big football kids who needed to be on the floor. The Northern Lakes League in Northwest Ohio is a grinder. We're talking, Mark Donnell played at Michigan. Several other kids have played in the Big Ten, whatnot. So we knew we were never going to take these football kids who are going to be our 4 and our 5 in the Princeton offense. And your 4-man in the Princeton offense has to be able to pass, dribble, and shoot, as does your 5-man. Maybe not shoot it so much, but he's got to be able to pass and dribble. We were never going to make them they were never going to be successful if we stuck with that system. So we went right back to blocker mover, which we'd ran in the mid-90s when Dick Bennett was at Wisconsin, even Stevens Point. We went back to that and put those kids in situations where they were going to be successful, screening, rebounding, giving them very specific rules, but they weren't going to be on the perimeter handling the basketball as they would have been if we were still teaching Princeton. So I think whatever school district you're in, and you evaluate the kids who are coming into your program who don't put basketball as their first priority, but they're good athletes, maybe they're big, strong kids who can move their feet and have bought into your system, there's a way to put them on a basketball court and put them in a situation to be successful. You might have to change your defensive system. You might have to change your offensive system a little bit, which we did at Maumee. But there's ways to do that. That's not to say you can take a kid who can't play and make him a player. He might be 6'6" and can't catch a basketball to save his life, and he can't do anything. He travels every time he catches it. I'm not trying to tell anyone that you can take that kid and put him on the floor and make him great, because sooner or later, even a blocker's got to catch the basketball. I'm not talking about those kids. I'm talking about the big kids who love to compete, who can play, who are pretty good athletes, but they're not going to shoot 17% from the three-point line. They're going to shoot 12%. You can take those kids and and put them in a situation to be successful in the right system. I really believe that. But again, if you can't play, if you can't catch the ball, you can't dribble, you can't pass it at all, and you travel every time you catch it, then those aren't the kind of kids I'm talking about.
Definitely makes sense. I think we got one more question for it. Well, kind of 1-2-ish questions here, but they're a little broad and big, so I want to make sure you have some time to answer it the way you want to. What is your scout and preparation process like from game to game? Do you incorporate film? Are you, spending a lot of time talking about the last game, or do you just kind of quickly move on and start implementing, here's what we need to do to win next game? What does that preparation process look like?
That's a great question. That's something that if I had any top 5 things I would say traditionally I'm most proud of my stabs would be everything that question entails. When I was at Maumee as the head coach, as I say, I still teach at Maumee, then we would do a lot of work or film work on our previous game. My assistant coaches are in charge of all that. I was in charge of it when we had VHS tapes and DVDs. I was pretty good at that. When we went to Hudl, then my young guys already knew how to do those things, so that got delegated to them. I was always a firm believer from the guys that brought me into the game, all those things need to be no more than 15 minutes long. So they would come up with a 15-minute cap and video clips of the previous game. Then we'd hit the practice court with a very specific emphasis on what we didn't do well and also what we did do well during that last game, no matter if it was a win or a loss. When it comes to scouting, when you're in a position that we've been in at Maumee, when I was in Hammond, Indiana, when I was in Marion, Indiana, when I was in now at Delta, we are coming from a position of, I guess the best way to say underdog. We're not going to be picked to beat anybody. So scouting for us is absolutely an essential part of how we do things. We scout very specifically how the other team guards cutters, how the chaser guards a cutter coming off a screen. We scout very specifically how the person defending a screener defends that. Does he jump out and hedge? Does he zone up and guard the rim so he doesn't get slipped? We scout very specific things about how the opposition plays defense against against offense. Do they force the ball a certain way? When the ball's thrown to the wing, do they force you baseline? Do they play you square? Do they try to keep the ball on one side of the floor? So all those things the opposition does, no matter if it's zone, man-to-man, full court, half-court press, whatever, you might have to alter and probably will have to alter your offensive schemes in order to combat those defensive tendencies. So we want to hit the ground running. We get all that done on Sunday. All of that's done on Sunday. So we go in on Monday now, and we know what drill work we've got to do, how we've got to change our offense, how we've got to change our press offense, whatnot. And the kids have a very clear idea of what they're going to face on Friday night. And we work on that all week. What sets will work against this team? Do they go over the top when they guard screens and cuts? So our kids will have to fade. Do they chase? So you're going to have to make curls and vertical cuts. Do they play what we call mixer, where they just do a little bit of everything, go over the top, chase, trail, whatever. So all that prep work gets done on Monday. My assistants get a certain amount of film to watch. I get a certain amount of film to watch. So we meet and come up with our plan for the following week. Defensively, we're going to scout everything you've done the last 2 to 3 seasons against 2-3 zone. Everything, every set play, every continuity offense. And we plan Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We break it all down into drill work and put our kids through a battery of drill work of what your team does against 2-3 zone. Thursdays, euphoria for us is I have a crew of ex-players from Maumee come in, and my varsity assistant, Matt Brighton, and JV coach, Adam Conrad, and Jared Schreiner, our volunteer assistant, give them a dossier of what the opposition does against zone. And they go in the practice gym and go over all their sets, all their plays, and then they come out and run it against our kids. Full court, 5-on-5. And then it dawns on the kids, all these drill work, all the drills we've been doing, whatnot. This is what the other team does, which they've heard all week. But when you go 5-on-5 with that, then it makes a lot more sense with them. So our goal is when the other team calls out a set or an offense, the top 2 guys in our zone are turning around barking orders at the guys behind them, telling them exactly what's getting ready to happen, whether it be a lob, a center screen, a flare screen action, whatever. So, yeah, we spend an inordinate amount of time on scouting.
That's awesome. Any parting words you may have for any coaches out there who are building a program right now?
Yeah, my stabs and I have came up with this list, and it's been added to, and it will be added to for sure over the next X amount of years till I get out of here. Until I retire. And we just named it Taking Over a Program Rules. And right now we're at number 15. And I'll read it real quick. But these are the 15 things that we feel like my stabs and I over the last X amount of years have constantly added to. And number 1 is don't badmouth your predecessor. You come in, you badmouth your predecessor, a coach always has to remember there are still people in that community who liked him or her. And there's still players in that program who liked him or her. You're setting a bad example there by coming in. When you take a job, I'm talking about day 1, year 1, number 1, don't badmouth your predecessor. Number 2, your expectations are clearly understood after the first meeting. Number 3, your players only know what they know. Don't make them feel stupid. Refer to rule number 1. You go into your first year and you say stuff to your players like, what have you guys been taught? You guys got shotted on this. You guys, this isn't how you do it. You're telling those kids right now it's okay to make excuses. Because as a coach, you're telling them, geez, I got to work on this stuff with you guys. So don't do that. Number 4, you got to be yourself. Your personality, your philosophy, your expectations. What do you believe in? You've got to be yourself. Number 5, yes means yes, no means no. Kids understand yes, kids understand no. You start putting gray matter, or not gray areas into their gray matter and leaving things up for assumption, kids pick that up right now. Your yes has to mean yes, and your no has to mean no. Follow through on your follow through on your decisions will define you, whether it's a discipline issue, whatever. But your follow through on your decisions, important decisions, small decisions, they're going to define you not only with your staff, but your players in the community. Number 7, you've got to have a tryout and a playing time philosophy. And everybody's got to know what your philosophy is. If you don't have a playing time philosophy, you're going to have heartache from parents your first year all the way up to when you get out of this racket. You've got to have that, in my opinion. Number 8, coaches are better off being considered too strict than too loose from the eyes of a civilian. We call people who aren't coaching civilians. It's been over the course of my career, learning from a lot of heartache, talking to other people. We just feel like you're better off being considered too strict than too loose. Number 9, hire assistants who are loyal above all else. Number 10, all teams in your program must use the varsity team's terminologies and versions of their offense and defense. Number 11, be an effective communicator with players, parents, and administrators. How you communicate will lend to judgment, whether it's verbal or electronic communication. You're a professional. Being a head high school basketball coach or being a varsity basketball coach is a tremendous responsibility, and it is a very, very, very important position. You are in a major position of leadership. If you're not texting or communicating using proper grammar or writing the correct way, people in your community or on your team, especially those who are pretty educated, are going to make a judgment. And when you're in our line of work, the last thing you need is one more brick on your back. So be a very effective communicator, a timely communicator, and communicate in a proper grammatical sense. Be overly organized. Number 12, leave no stone unturned. The last thing we need, another brick you don't, or a monkey you need on your back is being called unorganized or disorganized. Be overly organized. Organize everything. Use charts, graphs, whatever you got to use, but be organized. The disorganization is one of the biggest things that gets us kicked out of our job. Be overly organized to the teeth. Dress like a professional. Number 13. When the fans walk into the gym, they want to be able to tell the head basketball coach from a civilian. We are in a professional position. Of course, this is all just my opinion. Take this for what it's worth. Dress like a professional. We don't need to be an extension of AAU at the high school level of athletics. You need to look sharp. You need to look like a professional. You need to look like someone who is very, very proud of being in your leadership position. If you're wearing jeans, at least in this area, or sneakers, whatever, you're taking us one step closer to AAU. This isn't the summer. So we are very, very, very concerned about looking like professionals. And truth be told, I think the parents want to see it. I think your kids want to see it. I think the community people who come to games want to see it. They want to see their basketball coach looking like a professional, especially for the grandparents and the parents. They want to see their coach look like their coaches looked. You go back to the beginning of my career as a 9th grade coach. It was required sport coat and tie. And we've gotten away from that in this line of work and in education. I'm a firm believer. One of the things that's hurt us in public education is when teachers stopped wearing ties, sport coats to school. My father was a head football coach and a mathematics teacher, and my grandfather was head basketball coach where I went to high school. He'd retired before I got into school, but those guys wore sport coats and ties everywhere they went in school. So I'm a big believer in that. Number 14, give your staff responsibilities and expect excellence. Number 15, have a trustworthy mentor who wants you to win. So they're not going around the community and bragging about, hey, I got coach's ear. Coaches, I'm coach's guy. The best mentors, nobody else in the community knows that they're the mentor for the coach. It's an ex-head coach, a current head coach, someone who wants to see you be successful and wants to help you get there. And they're going to tell you a lot of things you don't want to hear about what they see when your teams play and what they hear or what they don't hear. But ultimately, they're the guys or gals who want to see you be successful and want to see you make it through your entire coaching career and retire as a head coach. So those are the 15 things we've come up with over the last 24 years that we think are pretty darn important for taking over a basketball program.
That's an awesome, clearly well thought out list that comes from a lot of experience. And thank you for sharing that list with us. And thank you for your time. We've been doing this for a little over an hour now, and
Okay.
I mean, there's a ton of important information in here that I know is going to connect with coaches who are at different points in their career or at different points with their program. So we definitely appreciate your experience and your wisdom and those nuggets that you're. And it sounds
I
like
would
you're
say there's
connecting
some
with young
experience
coaches a lot.
there. I'm not so much sure about wisdom.
Well, allow me to say it for you. There's wisdom there for me, definitely, to take and work in with our program. So, Coach Derek Sheridan of currently at Delta High School, but 24 years of experience. Thank you so much for your time and sharing what you've learned and what your tenure has taught you.
Well, I sure appreciate you having me on, and I hope I didn't drop everybody's IQ who listened.
Certainly not mine. I appreciate it, Coach. You have a great rest of your day, sir.
You too. Thank you.
Take care.